Hi, I'm Jamie Smart, and welcome to another conversation with people who are getting the principles out there and sharing this understanding in their work and in their lives. I've been interviewing a number of people over the past couple of weeks, including you may have heard my interviews with Liz Scott and Nick Bettini, with Martijn Bos, with Louisa Dale. I've got an interview coming up with Anka Herman. I'm sure I've missed at least one person, if not more, but they're all here in the Clarity Life community, so you'll be able to find those videos. I've really been looking forward to this interview because, among other things, this is the first couple that I've interviewed as part of this series. And Pete and I can't actually remember who I met first, whether it was Pete or Mira, but I've been working with both of them for several years, and we've got to know each other. And it's been incredible to watch their evolution. They're the creators of the Mind Takeaway podcast. I've coached both of them in different ways and seen really big breakthroughs. And seen them taking this understanding into their work, doing an authentic leadership program, working with creatives and executives and business leaders and entrepreneurs. And so I'm really excited to be just finding out more about their work and sharing it with you guys. So welcome, Mira. Welcome, Pete.
Thanks for having us, Jamie.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's an honor to be here and to be in this series of your interviews because, yeah, I mean, there's lots of things that we don't see from the inside. So it's good to know that it's visible.
Well, and the nice thing is, what I always say to people, as you guys will know, is, and this is actually something that you guys do on your podcast as well, is just kind of set your direction for a connected conversation, and then you see what emerges. So as you probably know, the place I like to start is just to ask, what first sparked your interest in these principles?
Yeah, do you want me to go first, or?
Okay, I'll go.
I think I was curious about, the mind and coaching, and I came from a place of being a professional musician, but also in parallel being a leader and having quite a long corporate career, good 20 years. Mm. And I was just curious, why is it there's loads of steps and fixing and modalities and tools? And it just couldn't find anything that was 100% effective. Mm. That just piqued my interest. And then I came across the likes of your book, Jamie, actually through Mira. Mm. And I think at the time I was looking at Pransky and Michael Neal and people like that. And what really piqued my interest is there was no fixing involved. And that was like, okay, there's got to be something to this. And then that sent me on an amazing journey as to how we got to speak, today, I guess. So, yeah.
So we have Mira to thank for this. I didn't realize that. How did you first come across it, Mira?
Well, I was in coaching and therapy world before that. And I heard of you from my first mentors through the NLP. And I remember I moved to Berlin. Peter was then living in Berlin. I moved to Berlin and I started really working as a coach and a therapist. And it was constantly something missing. And I felt like I can't really sell people. Like I felt really uncomfortable telling them that this is what you need to do in order to be okay, because I myself didn't think that I'm okay, that because there was always something coming up, always something new, always something, so it was like a roller coaster of things. And then I remember being in Amsterdam with Peter and roaming through the bookstore when he was on a training, and I saw your Clarity book, and I'm like, wow. So I knew who you are, and then I got a book and I started reading a book, and I was going through the videos and links that you had in the book, and I was listening to one of the coaching sessions that you had. I think it was Pete Braceland or that last name. And I had a really big realization at the time. And I went into some networking events and I got few clients and I was really confident. And I was suddenly, absolutely fine, and there was nothing else needed. And I'm like, okay, there's something there. And then I kept on, following what you're doing, and reading and discussing with Peter. And yeah, I mean, it took a couple of years, and then I was on your training, and yeah, and Peter was the first one actually on the training, and then
I remember. And the thing that really struck me in what you just said, because I think what you spoke to, Mira, is something that a lot of people can probably relate to. Is on the one hand, we get inspired to, do change work, or to become coaches or therapists or change workers. And then that sense of kind of really wanting to help people, but not kind of feeling like we actually have something that we can rely on to give. And it looks to me like just such a black and white difference, moving from that to being kind of rock solid, that there's something here. What have you guys seen in terms of, like, as you've kind of found your feet with that, knowing that you're standing on solid ground and you've got something that you can absolutely, take to the bank, as they say? What have you noticed with that? What's been the impact of that?
I guess just knowing that all of our clients already have everything they need, and that takes away a lot of anxiety for you being a professional, trying to do transformation work, because the only time that we don't see it is when we get up in our own head. And it happens still, of course, but just being okay with that, and actually just being that real with the clients, and practice what we preach, so to speak, because we're running an authentic leadership program. And, you have to show up and just be yourself. And the more you do that with your clients, guess what happens? They relax, you have a nice connection with them, and they're more likely to get what they came for, right? So
that's so cool to hear. And you mentioned your authentic leadership program. What's the journey been like for you guys in having the inspiration for that and bringing it into being and all of that?
It was, I don't know, it's really interesting. I never thought of myself as somebody who's going to work with leaders or helping them on their leadership journey. It was, I come from pain management and fixing things, but it was just really, I don't know, it just kind of spoke through us. I mean, we both had careers. Peter had a career as a leader for many, many years, and longer than me. And I worked, I mean, I set up the rehab center in the past, and I think I was first-time manager when I was 25, 26 years old, I think. But it was really interesting that I never saw myself in that light. And then I think it came from nothing. It was just an idea that we started talking about, and it didn't even make sense when we started, I think. And then talking to somebody else, and then you develop, and then people pick up on that, and then you go, oh, okay, actually, I would really love to do this. And then you find out. It was interesting that, I think when I found out why I want to work with leaders, it was when I actually started to work with leaders. It wasn't before. It wasn't like, oh, I have this, I want to do it because. But it was actually when we started working with leaders, then I actually started making sense. Why are we doing it?
I love that, because it really, to me anyway, it really speaks to the idea of authentic desires. Like we have these desires placed in our hearts that, what we want to do or what we want to create. And we can make up stories about why they're there, but actually they have their own intelligence. They have their own reason for existing. And if we follow that enthusiasm, we discover what it's about. So how did you go from kind of having the idea of it to getting to the point where you're running an authentic leadership program? I know the most recent group you've taken through it. You were telling me just before we got on this session that they were really curious about diving more into resilience and that sort of thing, and exploring the principles. How did you get from having the idea and being like, oh, okay, we want to do this, to working with groups and having clients for it and all of that?
I think having the podcast going on at the same time in parallel and speaking to a lot of people who were like-minded, whether they were coaches or, you know, great leaders in their own right, stuff like that. It just got us in that kind of frame. And it was a pure experiment. Right from the get-go, we just said, look, you know, let's not put some tight lid around this. Let's just have a rough structure. So we had you know, for a 12-week program, we had some main headings for it and a load of things that we thought was useful for leaders from our own experience. But rather than make those assumptions, we also went out there, surveyed people. We even surveyed and screened the people that became our clients. So even before the program rolled, and to be fair, we learned a lot from you, Jamie, going through some of your programs that, you know, I loved the way you structured it. And it was a lot more fluid than having this tight structure around it. And, you know, it progressing and flowing and growing with the clients based on their realizations, their kind of needs. But that wasn't to say that, you know, midway we had some interesting feedback and we had to kind of pivot a little bit. But it was really great to see that. And we were really surprised at how comfortable we were just to be like, we hear you, let's switch it up. And I think that's why they really got what they came for, because we were totally open about not having a rigid structure placed on it. And I think that give it such power, because we said, this is kind of what it looks like to become a leader. These are the kind of labels that are out there. But in reality, this is what's really going on. And that's when it comes back to the principles behind clarity, you know? Yeah.
Well, I love that too, because there's a real sense of you guys bringing your authenticity to your clients and kind of leading the way with that and being willing to kind of go on an exploration in a way and find out, you know, and I often find that when I create a new program, it's often as much about discovering the things that we're exploring as it is about figuring it out and then telling everyone. It's more like, let's find out together. So I love the sound of that. What you mentioned before the call, that in going through the program with people, they got very interested in the principles and this idea of resilience. What did you find out in that? Like, what happened?
Wow, I'm still blows my mind just thinking about it. We're still looking, wading through the feedback and stuff, because we've got really great, information back from these guys, because they were very kind enough to spend a lot of time telling us what they got. And even stuff that, you know, we really didn't envisage. It wasn't in scope of the project at all. But then, you know, when we say they got what they came for, they got, I think they're definitely better leaders, and they've gone out and now they're, you know, putting that into place. And part of
what had they come for? Sorry to interrupt, but you said they got what they came for, and what was it that had motivated them, and that had, like, what was the promise, if you like, when they first enrolled?
To be more authentic, to be more themselves.
Confidence.
Yeah, and I think this is the anchor into, you know, exploring the mind at that level, and why we ended up going deeper, because they were like, hang on a minute, we see how you're operating. We talked about this before, right? I think just how we showed up, and we didn't really, it wasn't a plan. You know, we were just comfortable, and there was days where we weren't comfortable and up in our head. And there was one day, if you remember, we watched a video back from one of the weekly calls, and I just felt really not confident that day for some reason. And as you do, I was up in my head. But when we reviewed the footage, it was all BS. And we just burst out laughing, because it was like, it's amazing the power of the mind, right? And
you mean, just to clarify, I mean, when you watch the video back, even though you'd been up in your head, you'd thought it was affecting the thing, but actually it was fine?
Yeah,
exactly. And it didn't. So, for example, in this particular call, I felt that the group were pushing back on learning something new, but it was actually me that was just up in my head. Right. And it just didn't land well with me. And then I sent myself on a merry dance. But the fact that I was okay to be okay like that, it blew my mind, because again, it wasn't a strategy. It wasn't something that I envisaged. And only until we watched the footage back, we were both like, I'm relaxed. And it's just really interesting, because it didn't impact their experience. They weren't even aware of it. That was the interesting thing. It was only until we reviewed it later and we realized we just needed to calibrate ourselves, you know.
Which is, I mean, that's the lesson that I keep learning is it's all calibration, right? And the most important person to calibrate is yourself. The other thing I hear in what you're saying is a big part of the juice for your clients was that you guys were modeling authentic leadership in how you conducted yourself, how you run the program, how you showed up, all of that. So that's really cool. What other the big takeaways have you guys got from doing this program?
Yeah. Well, I guess that was one of the big ones, because that was our realization on very beginning. If we are going to talk about authenticity and leadership, we need to be those people, and vulnerability was a big part of it, you know, being comfortable being in that space. And I think one of the big things that I realized towards the end, it was on that call that Peter mentioned, it was a big realization of it looked really real. It looked really real. And then you watch it back and you go, oh, I was so wrong. And it was beautiful to see that, because then I actually started questioning everything else that I think it's true, you know.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Like in any moment, we've got our perspective, but that's it. And there's always going to be a variety of perspectives in a situation like that.
And it was a humbling experience for us, right?
Oh yeah. But and then the other thing was really deep realization. You know, before I knew that people are okay and that they have really everything they need in order to, but I still thought that I really have to do a lot for them to realize. So I need to explain to them, I need to take them through a certain process on everything. One of the biggest realizations, my own personal, was that I really just need to create the space. And they understood, we gave them space to you know, discuss things and coach each other and on all of that. And whenever I would go, oh, I need to say something, and then I would stop myself and just sit down, somebody else said it. And none of them went through the training that we went through. So it was beautiful to see that actually the only thing that we really needed to do is really create that space and let them loose.
I love that though, because it's kind of interesting. A lot of times, I mean, you may have seen this in Clarity Pro where I've gone through, you know, helping someone map out a workshop or a talk or something. And there's a real sense of less is more. Like often I'll see people really over prepare and have, you know, a detailed, you know, 15-point structure for what they're going to do. And then they go in to do their workshop or their talk, and 2/3 of it comes out, because actually just creating that space and letting people discovering it for themselves does so much of the heavy lifting. So you've created this podcast, The Mind Takeaway, and you've had, how many seasons have you guys done now?
Well, we didn't separate into seasons, but I think we're up to what, episode
33 coming, or no, it just came out actually.
It's been pretty amazing, but also it took up a lot of time, if we're honest. And we put the handbrake on a little bit because we were doing one a week. You know, making sure we had enough guests, and even the production side of it, we didn't envisage how much time it would take. So every 2 weeks now, and we're really lucky that we got into a rhythm of just, you know, the network expanded organically. We're so lucky that just through the inner network and the people we end up just having a nice connected conversation with, that always paying it forward. It always amazes us. I mean, one particular guest, we haven't even released the episode yet, and she tried to hook us up with 6 people literally an hour after the episode, and I was like, wow. Nice.
And it's kind of cool, isn't it? Because I heard you saying that when you were talking about doing research as well, that just getting out there and connecting with people and speaking to people, finding out about their world creates its own kind of energy, doesn't it?
It's such I mean, it's it's such a good way of doing a sanity check, right? And I'm guessing all businesses, we all get that wrong. All entrepreneurs, I'm hearing, you get really passionate about something, but you don't go and test if people really want that. So I guess for us, it wasn't even like a strategy. I don't think that we didn't really sit down and go, we must do that. It just made sense as we progressed. We'd done a lot of experiments. We'd spent the year before doing many workshops, and exactly what you're saying, Jamie, throwing the kitchen sink at a 2-hour workshop and coming out exhausted. And we were like, that's not where it's at.
And still thinking we didn't do everything we should have.
Yeah.
So, but once you've done a few of those, you stop doing that, right? And then it was like, okay, slow down. And exactly what Mira was saying, when we done the 12-week thing, we just allowed a lot more breathing space for the clients to marinate and just learn for themselves. And yeah, we still jumped in when we got overexcited, as you do, but we, again, we kept just sitting down after each week and slowly going, how was that? How was the experience? And that's how we learned, just slowly, step by step, I guess.
And as well as working with leaders, you've been working with creatives, and obviously, Pete, you've got a background in the creative industry. What have been some of your experiences working with creatives?
Yeah, I mean, creatives in themselves, and me being one, they always come up with amazing things. It's in-baked. But what I've noticed is we forget as creatives that everyone else is creative. Yeah. And that's actually the brick wall that most creatives cliche as it sounds. That's what happens. So again, it's just allowing them some space to realize that actually it's always there. There's no off switch when it comes to innovation and creativity. And that's it. It's the same thing, whether it's leadership, whether it's leaders or whether it's business people or personal people, it's the same thing playing out time and time again. It's just that it's a different label, a different hat, I guess. Yeah.
The thing that strikes me as I listen to you, like the thing you just said, almost as a kind of offhand comment, what creatives discover is it's always there. There's no off switch, and away you go. But actually, for many people listening, and for most of the world, they'll be like, "You what? Because the story we get told is that certain people are creative and that certain people aren't, and that even if they're creative, they run into writer's block or that sort of thing. And so the idea, not only that it's always there, but that there isn't even an off switch. That sounds like, for most people, I think that's going to be huge. What do you, like, when you're first kind of introducing people to that notion that actually whatever they may have been told about creativity, that they are inherently creative and that there's no off switch and so on, how do you point people in that direction? What kind of objections or beliefs do you have to overcome with that? Like, what have you discovered?
Just to share my own experience, in all honesty, because I really messed it up back then, like everyone else, in my time being a DJ and then being a producer, touring in bands and stuff, and having really tight deadlines to complete projects while still having a proper job as well, which is insane when I think about it. And I didn't see it for a long time. I mean, if you told me that 10 years ago, I would have been, don't buy that. There is an off switch. I've got no creative juice left. I've run out. My tank's empty. So all I do, I share, some stories, but crucially, I just listen to them. Because there's no point in me trying to put up an argument, right? And that, I think what piques their interest, what gets them curious is that me having nothing on it. And the more I'm just like, okay, so tell me what you do. My starting point is just like, what you do to get your mojo on? Why is it suddenly run out? And I get curious about that, because until I've really listened to their story and found out why they're stuck in the first place, then there's no point even trying to help them. I'll be jumping the gun, right?
Yeah, that's so cool. That's so cool. And how have you found that kind of just seeing that creative potential has, because I look at the stuff you're doing, right? Like the Mind Takeaway, like the Authentic Leadership Program, the way that you're finding your way into the world with what you guys do and what you're sharing. it seems to me like a great example of creativity in action and in process. What are you guys discovering as you find your own way to share this understanding with the people who you're connecting with and all of that?
Something just really funny crossed my mind when you said that. I think what I'm discovering is probably in 5 years' time, I've got no idea what I'm going to do. It's and that's been a little bit of a I was talking to somebody earlier today, and I was trying to make something and thinking to forward, and because I knew that things will change, so how can I make it so I don't have to change that thing that I'm planning? We're planning a leadership group. So how can I make it so good so I don't have to change much in the future? And then I just slapped myself in the forehead. I'm like, duh, it doesn't work that way. You just really need to start. And I think that that's the thing, that you really don't know in what direction you're going to go in the end. You really need to take that step, and then you will see what to do next.
I absolutely love that, because it's funny. This has kind of been a theme that I've been talking to a lot of people about the last little while, is that we're actually much better at doing things and taking those steps and learning as we go along than we are at figuring out everything in our heads in advance. But we've been told that that's the way we're supposed to do it. But actually, we're just better at getting amongst it and taking the next step and seeing what happens and adjusting and pivoting and, all of that stuff. So I love what you're saying. And the other thing I wanted to ask you guys is, you're doing all this where you're having a great impact with people and making a real difference in the world. All of this, for what purpose?
God, we get a buzz out of it. I mean, you have to pinch yourself. I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but like I said before, it blows my mind when someone we're working with sees what we've seen. Just having that, just for a millisecond, that kind of experience with a light bulb moment. I'm just like, holy shit! Sorry for swearing, but
I encourage it.
It is every day, and how can you not want to do that?
Yeah,
the fact that there's creativity in there. We're just riffing. Honestly, we're just having fun. I mean, God, the business, it would never have happened unless we just, as Mira said, we're just experimenting. But I guess now, because we've refined what we do, and we spent it took a good 2 years, if I'm honest, to get where we are, right? But it wasn't like it was a hard slog. We were just having fun. And now that it's, I would say a real business, right? And then now it's slowly starting to make money. But that hasn't changed it at all. We're not going to change what we do. We're just more aware of what's going to work and what doesn't work. Or if it doesn't seem to bear fruit, we're more likely to put the brakes on faster than wasting another 6 months, blindly flailing around. But not to say that we don't make mistakes, and it's okay. And I think that's the massive learning point for me, at least, that it doesn't matter if we get it wrong. We're both willing to be honest with each other and go, okay, so what can we learn from that?
And I love what you're pointing to is that, it's funny, I've talked to lots of people about this too. Everyone thinks that there's a way to do business, and somewhere someone knows what that way is, and they've got the big special book about it. But actually, it's a learning process. We're learning how to share this understanding. We're learning how to build businesses. We're learning how to reach audiences and have an impact and all that sort of stuff. It's a learning process. So same question to you, Mira. All of this, for what purpose?
You know what? It's interesting. And I never thought about this before. It just really crossed my mind now. And it's really for my own development. And that's what I've seen, that it's happening all the time. You set to do something, you got to overcome something or learn in order to get there. So it's a constant learning curve. It's constant, and I don't know. I am kind of person that is curious about lots of stuff, and I think we both have lots of this curiosity within us. And sometimes it's a bit annoying because you think, oh, I wish I could just sit and relax and just do this one thing and never move from here. But then I tried that once and it didn't work for me. So I think it's just really, it's pushing. It's a growth. It's a personal and professional growth, and I think this is the purpose. And then at the same time, helping other people to grow with us, because it's not fun doing it alone.
Well, it's funny you say that. The thing that first inspired me to get into the work that I do now and have been doing for over 20 years, it was both of those. It was, on the one hand, a real sense of, gee, I would love to share what I'm seeing with others. And I want to have a good excuse for continuing on the journey myself. It's like, it seems like a really, really great win-win. So where can people find out more about you guys? Where can they find the podcast? Where can they find out about your work and what you're up to?
So the website is a good place to go and get the to sign up for a newsletter. But we're also on LinkedIn and on Facebook. I think we're a little bit more active on LinkedIn lately because of I don't know, for whatever reason it suits us better. Yeah, so we just really send everything in a newsletter for now. We are forming a new group, but we still didn't, so there's nothing to share.
So what's the web address?
www.themindtakeaway.com.
The Mind Takeaway. So the Mind Takeaway is kind of the hub. And then on LinkedIn and Facebook, if people just look for Pete or Mira Griffiths, they'll find you guys there.
Yeah. And the podcast is on every bigger platform, isn't it? It's even in TuneIn Radio or something.
Yeah, it's on all the major platforms, iTunes, Spotify, etc.
My podcast's not on TuneIn Radio. I need to go and look at that.
It's a new thing. Yeah, you should.
I'll check it out. Thank you so much, guys. It's been a real pleasure.
Likewise. Thanks for having us.